This Week with Bob Mueller on News 2.
This week,
we see that support in your steadfast commitment to provide Israel with the tools we need to defend ourselves.
a historic wartime visit to Israel by President Biden offering support and caution as the war intensifies. More in our This Week cover story.
I would say for many in the Jewish community, the past week and a half has had us walking around in a state of comparative shock.
While the war is being fought in Gaza, its impact is being felt here in Tennessee. You will hear from the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Nashville.
DAs have discretion, so you have to factor that in, which creates a higher bar.
A call for impeachment of an elected district attorney by the Speaker of the House.
We just want to make sure that we're uniformed across the state.
And lawmakers next year will consider mandating the recording of juveniles during interrogation by police. Hello again, and welcome to another edition of This Week. The president becomes the first sitting president to travel to Israel during a time of war. Also a conversation with Rabbi Daniel Horowitz, CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Nashville, about the war and its impact here. But we begin with a lot of news about juveniles, juvenile crime, and a call from the Speaker of the House for impeaching a district attorney accused of not taking juvenile crime serious enough.
Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton and Shelby County District Attorney Steve Mulroy don't see eye to eye.
We have the Speaker and other members of the leadership making up things to try to create an impeachment for Mulroy.
That feud has now come to a head as Sexton is floating the idea of impeachment over Mulroy's lack of support for Sexton's juvenile crime reform. Though the Speaker admitted the requirements for impeachment are strict.
Not upholding the laws and not following the laws is one of them, but the DAs have discretion, so you have to factor that in, which creates a higher bar to get over.
If you look at the numbers in Tennessee, they actually show a decrease in juvenile crime over the last decade or so. But Sexton says the numbers don't paint the whole story.
To have a DA down there who says juvenile crime is not running amok tells you, is he not listening to the people? Does he not see it? Why does he doesn't see it if everybody else sees it?
The feud is starting to trickle into the General Assembly. Memphis Democratic Representative G.A. Hardaway says there's a lot of ways lawmakers can wisely spend their time in the Capitol.
Trying to make up stuff to impeach General Mulroy is not one of them. My people aren't interested in being used as political pawns. They don't want to see these legislative parlor tricks.
Now, Sexton did say he did not think Mulroy was at risk, at least right this second.
Is it possible? Yes. But, can you do it right now? I don't think he's gone to that level yet.
But the fact that he's floating the idea tells you he's giving it serious consideration. I did reach out to Mulroy's office for comment this morning. They said they were too busy for an interview, but provided a statement. In part, it read, "It'll take time and state and local agencies working together to turn this around. I look forward to meeting soon with Speaker Sexton or his staff to let him know what we're doing on this issue, to get his input, and to share with him how state government can help."
Speaker Cameron Sexton has consistently said juvenile crime is on the rise, particularly in Shelby County. But the numbers tell a different story.
Lawmakers in Tennessee over the past year have constantly cited high juvenile crime numbers as a reason for reform. But arrest data shows a different story. In fact, throughout the state, juvenile crime arrests have been down by nearly 50% since 2012, according to the TBI. Diving deeper, Shelby County has followed that same trend. The Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton, has long held that crime is up.
The amount of people that I met with who said that juvenile crime is on the rise and it's a problem is astronomical.
So why is there a breakdown between numbers and what Sexton says is reality? It depends on who you ask. Memphis lawmakers actually point to constant news coverage as a clear reason.
We are being bombarded with news of juvenile crime every day.
When reporters asked Sexton if he had any real, data-driven evidence that juvenile crime was increasing as opposed to anecdotal evidence, he said the anecdotes are factual.
Anecdotal, when you're talking to every resident in Memphis and business owner, I don't think it's anecdotal. I think that would be, it comes back to me as factual.
When I followed up with Sexton's staff, they sent me graphs of crime data and said the number of arrests in Shelby County aren't correlating with the number of crimes actually happening. In response, Sexton has floated the idea of impeaching the Shelby County District Attorney while also pushing legislation to send juveniles to adult prisons. Both ideas Democrats have come out against.
They're not born saying, I want to be a felon. You know, they're little babies. All little babies, for the most part, act alike. They do the same thing at 1 that they do at 2, no matter where the child is in the world, honestly.
Instead, Memphis Democratic Representative Antonio Parkinson says he'd like to see investments in programming to steer children away from crime before they get older.
There are special rules when law enforcement deals with juveniles. Lawmakers will consider another next year, a bill requiring children be recorded during interrogation by law enforcement.
With juvenile crime expected to become a major focus of next year's regular session, residual bills have started to take shape.
This is one of those bills that I believe it protects all parties. It keeps frivolous things from being said about law enforcement, and also ensure that law enforcement is being accountable as well. So it holds everyone accountable.
Memphis Democratic Representative Jesse Chisholm had a bill last session that got kicked to next year. If it passes, it'll make a requirement for a law enforcement officer conducting a formal interview or interrogation of a child at a law enforcement facility concerning any violation of state or federal law by the child shall make a video or audio recording of the interview or interrogation.
In Shelby County, we're already doing it, as well as so many other counties in the state. We just want to make sure that we're uniformed across the state.
The bill received unanimous support in the Senate.
You know, when it came through the Senate Judiciary Committee, frankly, it was a very short discussion. The bill made sense to most of us, where you have audio or visual recording when you're interrogating a juvenile. That made sense to us, and we just passed it out.
A few stragglers in the House had issue with an exception in the bill that says if law enforcement did not record an interrogation and can't prove they tried to, a juvenile can go free.
An exclusionary rule, if it's violated, you don't just lose the confession, you lose all the evidence that comes after that as well. That's also tainted.
But Chisholm says he thinks it may have just been an issue with the timing, since the bill came up for discussion around the same time as when 2 Democratic lawmakers were expelled and brought back to the House. Now he feels a little better about it.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I believe that we have a good consensus. As it stands right now, it's a bipartisan bill.
The bill was set for a summer study next week, but lawmakers tell me they've resolved the issues they had with the bill. In Nashville, Chris O'Brien.
Now to our This Week cover story. President Joe Biden traveled to Tel Aviv, Israel this week, meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, pledging full support for Israel and announcing $100 million in humanitarian aid for Gaza. While here in Nashville, 280 Americans and Israelis fled the war-torn nation and arrived on a charity flight at B&A.
President Biden arriving in Tel Aviv Wednesday, meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, reaffirming America's support for Israel.
We see that support in your steadfast commitment to provide Israel with the tools we need to defend ourselves.
Israel has launched a blistering series of retaliatory airstrikes into Gaza after Hamas terrorists slaughtered more than 1,400 people. More than 3,500 Palestinians have been killed in those Israeli attacks. The IDF now poised for a potential ground invasion, continuing to urge residents in Gaza to head south for their safety.
We keep praying. We sleep every night, fearing that we will never wake up again.
President Biden acknowledging the suffering of the Palestinian people, saying the vast majority are not Hamas. Biden also announcing $100 million in new U.S. funding for humanitarian assistance for both Gaza and the West Bank, including clean water, food, medical care, and other essential needs. Israel saying they will agree to let that aid into southern Gaza.
If Hamas diverts or steals the assistance, they will have demonstrated once again that they have no concern for the welfare of the Palestinian people. And it will end.
But it's an explosion at Al-Ali Baptist Hospital in Gaza that the Palestinian Health Ministry says killed hundreds that has outraged the Arab and Muslim world. The president saying he grieves for the victims at the hospital.
Palestinian people are suffering greatly as well. We mourn the loss of innocent Palestinian lives.
Palestinian officials claim it was an Israeli airstrike. The IDF is blaming a misfired rocket from another terrorist group, Islamic Jihad. U.S. officials say, based on analysis of overhead imagery, intercepts, and open source information, Israel was not responsible. News of that explosion sparking protests throughout the broader Middle East region. Security forces using tear gas and a water cannon as clashes erupted near the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, Lebanon. President Biden had been scheduled to meet with the Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas, the Egyptian president, and the King of Jordan in Jordan. But following that hospital explosion, Abbas canceled the meeting, declaring 3 days of mourning. Inez de la Cuetara, ABC News, Jerusalem.
Israeli authorities report more than 1,400 people died since October 7th. And the Palestinian Ministry of Health says about 3,500 died in Gaza, leaving countless people in the region wondering if they are next and seeking a way out. News 2's Adam Mincer reports on a flight that took 280 Americans and Israelis from the region to Nashville.
For Morris and his kids, this was a rare moment of joy after nearly 2 weeks of chaos.
What I had to explain to my kids is something that I never in my life thought that I would have to.
The Israeli American lives about 2 miles from the Gaza border. The day of the Hamas attack still haunts him.
We were really just in complete darkness. We had to turn off the lights and the air conditioners, close all the windows, make it look like nobody was home.
At one point, Morris used the guardrail on his kid's bed as a makeshift door lock and told them where to find a knife and baseball bat.
Things like, I made a corner for you in the closet, and you go in as soon as I tell you, and don't say a word, and even pee in your pants if you have to, and don't go out under any circumstance.
Yesterday, Morris and his kids managed to get on a flight out of Israel. Their tickets free, courtesy of a nonprofit out of Murfreesboro.
A lot of these evacuation flights, they've been canceled, postponed, and everything, so we weren't even sure if we were going to end up getting here or not.
Morris was welcomed back to the U.S. after 16 years with singing, dancing, treats, and toys for his kids, all thanks to members of the Nashville Jewish community.
When you feel alone in the world, it's nice to know that there are people that stand with you.
There were more than 200 passengers on Morris's flight, all impacted by the war and the constant barrage of rockets.
You don't know, I went to my parents, they live like 10 minutes from me, and the alarm got me. I just had to get out of my car, lie down on the road. It's very scary because it's just a matter of luck.
Now on American soil, these passengers are hoping for a break and dreaming of the day tensions calm down and they can head back to their home.
Stay with us. This week continues in a moment, and a conversation with Rabbi Daniel Horowitz, CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Nashville.